against Bitcoin.
It's going up forever.
You're against Bitcoin, you're against freedom.
For being here with me. It's a huge honor to get the opportunity to talk with you. I have immense admiration and respect for you. In Venezuela, your party achieved a historic victory. You were not only able to prove the fraud committed by the government of Nicolas Maduro, who brazenly stole this election, but you were also able to prove your party's victory. And you were able to use technology and transparency to get this done. Yours was a people-powered election. People-powered governance should be the goal of every free nation. And what's also really important is people-powered money. Over the last 24 years, the Chavez and Maduro regimes have completely destroyed the Venezuelan bolivar. Despite enormous oil reserves and oil revenues, the currency has been vaporized and people's purchasing power and wages have been destroyed. The government has tried to paper it over by deleting a zero, adding zeros, changing the currency, but the outcome is really stark. Obviously, we have the hemispheric catastrophe and the world's largest refugee crisis. Now, some Venezuelans have managed to escape this broken system through Bitcoin. For some Venezuelans, Bitcoin has represented freedom money. If it's used properly, it can't be censored or confiscated or devalued by the regime. Can you tell us a little bit about how the Chavistas have destroyed the Venezuelan economy and currency, and how they've politicized money and the banking system in Venezuela? And can you also tell us a little bit about Bitcoin and what you think this technology might represent in that it can allow Venezuelans to be their own bank, and what kind of place this currency might have in a future democratic Venezuela?
Thank you, Alex, for these super important questions. And thanks to the Human Rights Foundation for raising awareness about our struggle during these very challenging times. The world knows of Chavez and Maduro's human rights abuses, but less is known about their violations of financial rights, a tragedy unfolding over the last 2 decades. The Venezuelan bolivar, once stable at 3 to 4 units per US dollar, has lost 14 zeros under Chavez and Maduro, turning a functional economy into a catastrophic financial crisis. In 2018, inflation reached an unimaginable 1.7 million%, with prices doubling every 4 days. Since 2016, cumulative inflation has exceeded 8 million%, driving millions of Venezuelans to flee our country. This financial repression, rooted in state-sponsored looting, theft, and unchecked money printed, happened despite our vast natural resources and despite an oil price boom that peaked at $147 per barrel in July 2008. Beyond breaking the currency, the regime weaponized financial systems against its people, freezing accounts, seizing assets, and cutting off services. Our campaign operates right now without banking access, isolated, yet resolute in our fight for change. Some Venezuelans found a lifeline in Bitcoin during hyperinflation, using it to protect their wealth and to finance their escape. Today, Bitcoin bypasses government-imposed exchange rates and thus helps many of our people. It has evolved from a humanitarian tool to a vital means of resistance. We are grateful for the lifeline Bitcoin provides and look forward to embracing it in a new democratic Venezuela. We envision Bitcoin as part of our national reserves, helping rebuild what the dictatorship stole.
Yo, welcome to Simply Bitcoin Live, your number one source for the peaceful Bitcoin revolution, also known as the separation of money and state. We cover the news, memes, memetic warfare, the culture, everything. Guys, it's going to be a hell of a show. I got to say, personally, I immigrated from Venezuela a long time ago, but I have a lot of family still there. Both my parents are from there. My wife's parents are from there. And, this recent election that happened, and I don't know how much I could say on YouTube, but let's just say the the means of which they conducted that election were highly questionable. And here you have the leading political opposition saying that Bitcoin is the currency of the resistance. Bitcoin gave them ability to have a money, to use a money without having to rely on the traditional banking system, because them relying on the traditional banking system meant that the money would be seized, the money would be confiscated. She also talked about how Venezuelans were using Bitcoin as a lifeline in order to protect themselves from hyperinflation due to reckless fiscal policy from the current Venezuelan government. This is what we're talking about. This is the separation of money and state. This is the peaceful revolution. And, you know, I saw that clip, and of course it means a lot to me personally, but I had recently on Wednesday, I had an interview with the presidential candidate of the country of Suriname, which is a country actually right next to Venezuela. And she is talking about very similar things in the sense of how central banks and how governments have used central banks to essentially hold their countries not only hostage, but also loot the population, steal from the population. And people are not really aware that it's happening because it's not a direct taxation. The numbers stay the same, but the purchasing power of the bills decrease. This is more obvious and apparent to countries that don't have a stable fiat currency, where the legitimacy of those local currencies is just, it's not apparent. People just don't believe it anymore. Like the example of the 100 trillion Zimbabwe bill is a great example of that. But even in the US, you know, we are very privileged that we live in a country that the currency is the world reserve currency, meaning there's a lot of central banks and a lot of people around the world that are holding the dollar. And it gives the US government this unique ability to just print a ridiculous amount of money without, you know, a crazy hyperinflation like Venezuela and Argentina. But there's still inflation nonetheless. I mean, if you were to believe the official numbers, I think it peaked at roughly 8.9%. But they kept changing the CPI. They kept changing how they calculated those numbers. And if you use the previous mechanisms of how they calculated inflation, it was really like 15 to 17%. And I think that's what people feel. They constantly work harder and harder and harder, and they still can't afford things. They still can't purchase a home. The groceries are getting insane. We played you a clip from Legacy Media yesterday of basically this lady trying to convince you that, you know, even though technology has gotten so much better, even though productivity has increased through the roof, even though generally life as a whole, because technological increases is much better than it was 20 years ago, people are somehow poorer. And the reason for that is broken money. And what I hear from Alex Gladstein, shout out to him, the Human Rights Foundation, and the amazing work that they're doing, is now you see another country in Latin America mentioning Bitcoin by name and mentioning why Bitcoin is so important and mentioning how they're going to use Bitcoin in order to propel their country towards a better future. That's not an isolated incident anymore. You have communities in Honduras. You have El Salvador, of course. You have, I just interviewed the potential president of Suriname on Wednesday. And now you have the opposition leader in Venezuela talking about how they're going to use Bitcoin in order to achieve a more prosperous Venezuela moving into the future. Yeah, this is the peaceful revolution. This is what it's all about. This is the separation of money and state. We must stop the state's ability to loot from its people via currency debasement, via central banking, via fiat. And the way that you do that is by adopting Bitcoin. And this isn't an election thing. This is an individual thing. So each individual has to make the choice, take the personal responsibility of opting out and choosing to, for the first time, take self-custody of their wealth. And by doing so, you're defunding the fiat system and you're empowering yourself with sovereign, undebasable, unconfiscatable money. and which allows you to transact with anyone around the world freely without having to ask for permission, without any fear of any type of censorship. This is what the peaceful Bitcoin revolution is all about. It's accelerating. I think we're starting to see it in the developing world more, but soon it's going to come to the developed world as well, because the United States specifically is on an unsustainable fiscal path. The amount of money that they continue to print, the amount of money that they continue to borrow. The US government spent $1.7 trillion last year that it collected in tax revenues. How were they able to do that? They printed the difference, and there are consequences to printing the difference. That's why you can't afford housing. That's why you can't afford groceries. And as Bitcoiners, remember, we have the solution to this problem, and it's our responsibility to put it on our shoulders, take agency, take action, and convince the people to the left of you, to the right of you, your neighbors, your friends, and your family. And I truly believe that by doing so, you're going to bring people together. In other news, the Federal Reserve, quote unquote Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States, continues its regulatory onslaught on Bitcoin-friendly banks. Another bank was sued by the Fed, and we're going to cover that today. And this continues a trend that has been happening for the last 2.5, I would say 3 years, the so-called Operation Choke Point 2.0. Could you imagine? The incumbent is the one who is tasked on regulating something that is potentially going to disrupt it. Because Bitcoin doesn't end banking. Bitcoin is a threat to central banking. Bitcoin was born because of the excesses and the injustices that happened during the 2008 financial crisis, which completely took away the opportunities of my generation, the millennial generation, and the Zoomer generation. Bitcoin is the peaceful protest to that. And I find it insane to me that the institution that has the most to lose, that is about to be disrupted, is the one that is also tasked with policing banks that are adopting something that potentially competes with this institution. Like, it's insane. I don't understand that. But there's a solution to this. And the solution to this is the upcoming election in the United States. It's going to have huge implications. Whether people realize it or not, you could pull an ostrich and put your head in the sand and pretend it doesn't matter. But the reality is that this upcoming election is going to be the first Bitcoin election. And depending on the administration that gets voted into power, it's going to determine what the regulatory environment is going to be for Bitcoin for the next 4 years. And that's something that's incredibly important to talk about. It's something that's incredibly important to highlight, because as much as Bitcoiners are anarcho-capitalists and they say that they don't care about politics, well, if you don't care about politics, politics surely does care about you. And it was inevitable that we were always to cross this bridge, because at the end of the day, what do we want? We want the separation of money and state that is inherently political, but is not in the political that we all think of, the voting politics, the fiat politics, like I like to call it. It is political in the sense of, you have to ask yourself as an individual, what system do you choose to continue using? Do you choose to use the Bitcoin system, an equal, equitable system where no one has the privilege of being able to create more money for free that everyone else has to work for, or a system of special privileges, which is the system of fiat, where the government has a monopoly on the control of money and the issuance of money and the censorship of money and the politicization of money. So that's the task at hand. That's what I have. That's what I lay out to you guys. What future do you want your children to be living in? Anyways, it's going to be a great show. We also have an extremely special announcement during the culture segment. I got my co-host today. The monologue was a bit long, bro, but like that interview with Alex Gladstein and the Venezuelan opposition leader was, it meant a lot to me personally. So anyways, how you doing, Opti?
I am doing wonderful, guys. It is Friday. Bitcoin is running exactly as designed. We got another day to talk about Bitcoin, and it's cheap sats. There's cheap sats out there. As much as we all want to get out of this 58K gang range, cheap sats are good if you got some fiat on the sideline. So again, I say it every day, and I'm probably a broken record by now. But once you switch your mental operating system to focus on Bitcoin, the whole world changes and everything is great. Everything is good for Bitcoin. Still a lot of work to do. Obviously, as we can tell from this cold open here, the signal is spreading. And I think really while you were going through this monologue, I was kind of recapping, how do we frame this year? You know, what would be the theme of this year, 2024, for Bitcoin? And I think it's laying that foundation so that in 2025, there's a huge building block. A lot of people are going to hear about Bitcoin. Bitcoin has got its tentacles everywhere. Bitcoin is starting to saturate the culture. It's been on corporate press pretty much all of this year. We're obviously in the presidential conversation. So I think Bitcoin has laid itself a really good foundation for 2025 and moving forward. The movement that is the Bitcoin network and the Bitcoiners themselves, I think is starting to solidify itself. And kind of touching on what you were saying, I had this epiphany last night, and I know a lot of Bitcoiners don't like to get political, but I think the way that we actually effectuate change here is not only building a parallel economy, it is by acquiring as much political power as we can. And I think this is what we're seeing as Bitcoiners by trying to get involved in politics this year. This is how we protect ourselves, guys. Like, love it or hate it, you need to achieve some political power to protect yourself. And that's what I think we're seeing. This is the very beginning of it. And as we move on, as number goes up, it's going to become super obvious to everyone in hindsight that Bitcoin was the move. So buckle up, boys and girls. I'm sure it's going to be the defining conversation for the next couple of years as things get crazier and crazier and crazier. But anyways, it's a really long intro here today. But guys, I'm going to tease it a little bit, but we're super excited for today's culture. We've been working really hard on the back end for this, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy what we're going to do. It's the next week or two. Just teasing it, Nika. Things are going to be changing here for the better. But let's get into the show. We've gone way too long today.
Absolutely, guys. Before we jump into the show, I do want to give a very special shout out to Simply Bitcoin's lead sponsor. Of course, we're talking about Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. Buy real Bitcoin, enable your independence with the fastest and safest way to buy Bitcoin in Canada and the USA. To get started, all you got to do is you put in your email address. The sign-up process takes about 2 to 5 minutes, and bada bing, bada boom, you're ready to buy automatic self-custody Bitcoin. What does that mean? That means every time you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, as soon as the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address. It doesn't even allow you to leave it on the platform. And this perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos of the separation of money and state. Every time you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, you earn Bitcoin Well points. You could redeem those points. You could use those points towards the Bitcoin Wishing Well contest. We're going to do it for you guys right now. We're going to toss a coin into the Wishing Well for an opportunity to win up to 1 million Satoshis. So get your Lightning wallets ready. First person to scan the QR code has won 500 sats. If you use promo code SimplyBTC, to sign up to bitcoinwell.com today, you get 3 tosses into the Bitcoin Wishing Well absolutely free for an opportunity to win up to 1 million Satoshis. So support self-custody by default Bitcoin on-ramps like bitcoinwell.com. To get started, go to bitcoinwell.com/simplybtc. All right, everybody, let's hit the numbers.
Bitcoin numbers.
Everybody, usually when you buy a hardware wallet, I want to tell you guys about our sponsor. It comes with a piece of paper, and that piece of paper is meant for you to write down your seed words. So it's either labeled 1 through 12 or 1 through 24. The thing is, paper is not meant to last generations. It could be lost in a fire. It could be lost to water damage. Your dog could literally eat that piece of paper. That's not how you want to store your generational wealth. You want to proof of work store your seed words into a titanium seed phrase storage kit. So what does that mean? It means the stamped seed comes with a hammer, letter stamping tools, an anvil, and it literally allows you, it gives you all the tools necessary for you to literally stamp your seed at home into a piece of titanium, letter by letter. It comes with everything you need, and it's fireproof, it's waterproof. Your dog's probably not going to want to eat a piece of titanium. This is how you should properly secure your generational wealth. Head over to stampseed.com today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $54,010. Sats per dollar, 1,852. Block height, 860,171. Blocks to halving, 189,829. Halving estimate, March 23rd, 2028. Total Lightning Network capacity, 4,960.68 BTC. Capacity value, 266 million. Realized monetary inflation continuing to take fiat currencies to absolute school, 1.39%. The market capitalization of Bitcoin, 1.07 trillion. And Bitcoin versus gold market cap, 6.13%. In other news, the Ripple co-founder and executive chairman, Chris Larsen, this is the same institution, same people that funded the Change the Code campaign, which was a social attack on Bitcoin, trying to make the case that Bitcoin uses too much energy. What they forget to mention is what type of energy is Bitcoin using. Bitcoin uses excess energy, and the vast majority of energy that Bitcoin miners use is actually coming from renewables. But those aren't convenient truths if you're trying to sell a narrative that Bitcoin is going to boil the oceans. But I find it poetic that the co-founder and the executive chairman of Ripple is supporting Kamala Harris. Now, it doesn't surprise me either, because Ripple is a centralized entity. Because it is a centralized entity, it needs the protection of the state and the approval of the state in order for it to continue to function. Because it's not a decentralized protocol, there is no executive chairman of Bitcoin. You can call Satoshi the founder, but he disappeared very early on, very early into the early days of Bitcoin, and he just left it to its own devices. If we've never heard from Satoshi again, some people speculate that Satoshi's passed away. So you could see the contrast between certain cryptos, and I would say cryptos, and Bitcoin. And that's inherently because of crypto's centralization and Bitcoin's decentralization. Anyways, this is the first message that the founder and CEO of Telegram has released since his arrest in France. And I'm going to see if I can get through all of it because it is quite long. But he says, Pavel Durov tweeted out, "Thanks everyone for your support and love. Last month, I got interviewed by police for 4 days after arriving in Paris. I was told I may be personally responsible for other people's illegal use of Telegram because the French authorities didn't receive responses from Telegram. This was surprising for several reasons. Telegram has an official representative in the EU that accepts and replies to EU requests. Its email address has been publicly available for anyone in the EU who Googles Telegram EU address for law enforcement. Number 2, the French authorities had numerous ways to reach me to request assistance. As a French citizen, I was a frequent guest at the French consulate in Dubai. A while ago, when asked, I personally helped them establish a hotline with Telegram to deal with the threat of terrorism in France. 3, if a country is unhappy with an internet service, the establishing practice is to start a legal action against the service itself. Using laws from the pre-smartphone era to charge a CEO with crimes committed by third parties on the platform he manages is a simplistic approach. Building technology is hard enough as it is. No innovator will ever build new tools if they know they can be personally held responsible for potential abuse of those tools." It reminds me of the quote from The Sovereign Individual, because we have to remember what is happening here. The information technologies are disintermediating information, and they're also disintermediating money. I'm going to read you a small quote from the book. Quote, businesses that offer services that facilitate the realization of autonomy by individuals will be subject to infiltration, sabotage, and disruption. And of course, you could say, what do you mean realization of autonomy? What do you mean Telegram? How is that helping me realize? It is because you now are using a platform that is not censored and moderated by the state. And that's the fundamental issue. Remember, governments were not ready for mass scale peer-to-peer communications. And that's exactly what social media is allowing. If you want to know why they're going after X, if you want to know why they're going after Telegram, if you want to know why they're going after Rumble, that is why. Before, 20 years ago, there was a handful of TV channels. There was a handful of publications. And they acted as gatekeepers of information. But now, where anyone could buy a camera, buy a microphone, and build their own platform, it becomes incredibly difficult for governments to control the narrative. And it reminds me of Nayib Bukele's piece that he wrote for Bitcoin Magazine as a reaction to the world media attacking El Salvador's Bitcoin law. And one of the things that he said in that piece was that their most important weapon is their control on the truth. And Telegram, because it wasn't playing along, because it wasn't quote unquote moderating content, which is just another form of saying censorship, they locked the guy up. If you want to know why Satoshi disappeared, this is exactly why. If Satoshi was still around today, he'd be in prison. Why? Because they would say the same thing. People are using your technology to commit crime. But that's an absurdity. That's an insane idea. Just because you invent a tool doesn't mean you should be held responsible for what that tool is used for. And this same type of thinking has been applied to the Tornado Cash case, which set a precedent that led to the arrest of the Samurai developers. And we should all be worried about this. Why? Because the precedent they're trying to set is that somehow writing software is illegal if that piece of software is used by for illegal purposes. How could you be held responsible for software that you wrote that someone used in an illegal manner? How could you do that? That's the precedent that they're trying to set, but the reason they're trying to set this precedent is because they're losing control. And that's what it fundamentally boils down to. And this is why protocols are so important, like Nostr, like Bitcoin, because there is no CEO, there is no foundation, there is no door to knock on. You can go after influential members of the Bitcoin community, you can do stuff like that, but Bitcoin doesn't stop. The ideas of Bitcoin continue. And that's the issue that they're having, right? Anyways, it goes on to say, establishing the right balance between privacy and security is not easy. You have to reconcile privacy laws with law enforcement requirements and local laws with EU laws. You have to take into account technological limitations. As a platform, you want your processes to be consistent globally while also ensuring that they are not abused in countries with weak rule of law. We've been committed to engaging with regulators to find the right balance. Yes, we stand by our principles. Our experience is shaped by our mission to protect our users in authoritarian regimes. But we've always been open to dialogue. But here's the problem. The West seems like they're going down the authoritarian regime path. So what happens when there is no country? I mean, El Salvador, shout out to Max and Stacy. I saw Nayib Bukele meet with the CEO of Rumble. So it looks like once again, El Salvador is becoming a bastion for freedom, Bitcoin, free speech, and all that. We have to hold the line. We have to speak up. And this is why I'm bullish on protocols. And this is why platforms are inherently vulnerable, because there is someone to go after, right? So anyways, that's my bit on this. Just crazy, this freedom movement that's happening around the world, how Bitcoin is coming into play, how social media is coming into play. And it also highlights how important it is for governments to control information. I didn't know that was the role of government. I didn't know that the government was in the role of dictating what narrative is true and what narrative isn't true. But, now it's obvious. But if you look back over the last, 20, 30 years in American history, think about all the wars that we've gone into. Think about what they told us to justify the war in Iraq. And then once you come to that realization, then you're like, oh, wow, that's why it's so important. That's why this is so important. Because how are they going to convince the people about unjust wars if they no longer have a monopoly on information? They can't. And that's why they arrested the Telegram CEO. And that's why they're going after Rumble. And that's why they're going after Elon. But you know what? You can't go after Bitcoin. You can't go after Nostr. Decentralization is a bitch, ain't it? That's my take on all this. I'm going to pass it on to Opti. These are historic times, man. But, it's baked into the theme of the show, my friend. This is the separation of money and state, bro. But we should sprinkle in some more words into that. This is the separation of information and state. And we're heading into the separation of money and state. Anyways, what's your take, Opti?
Yeah, I think we've been covering this all year. And I remember, Nico, when we first started covering a lot of the free speech stuff, there was people that are in the chat wondering, why are we even covering this? I thought this was a Bitcoin show. Well, very clearly, we constantly remind everyone that Bitcoin is literally code. Code is speech. This is a First Amendment issue. And as we always posture the question on here for you guys, if the governments won't allow you to speak freely, what makes you think they will allow you to transact freely? And really, when you go back to just the basic meaning of what fiat means, it is by decree of the government. Our money is basically government words. It's government debt. It's literally government IOUs. Like the whole world right now is running on government words right now. On the true and what did it say on the dollar? I haven't held a dollar in a minute. The full faith and credit of the Federal Reserve. What's that mean? You got to trust them. And so, of course, right now we are seeing that there is, I would argue, a consciousness raising moment on humanity where people are waking up to a lot of the lies that we've been spoon fed for most of our lives. And they are rightfully so getting angry. And even to a further extent, probably overshooting the target a lot. Right now, I know on Twitter, there's a lot of, for lack of better terms, conspiracy theories right now. And there's a conspiracy theory about everyone. And once you go down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole, you might get lost in some of these avenues that I think might be misinformation rabbit holes to kind of debunk the whole movement. But what we're seeing right now, and we reference this every time on the show about the Nayib Bukele, don't drink the elite's Kool-Aid. The reason the powers that be have been able to manufacture so much consent in the world is because they do control the narratives. As has been exposed this year very clearly, the corporate press is just an extension of the federal government, or as we would say sometimes, the administrative state. And they're not really journalists. And somehow Nico and I have become better journalists than the people in suits on television.
It's
incredible. It's incredible.
It's insane. But I mean, like, bro, like, it blows my mind. Like, okay. Because like we have to say, when we say those statements, like we have to like give context, right? Like, if you take a look at what has happened over the last 5 years, right? Like, you just use your common sense, like use your memory. Like, there's been a lot of things that we've been told. I'm not gonna get into the more divisive topics, but let's stick with something money related. There's gonna be no inflation. It's the supply chains. It's the war. Oh, there is inflation. Oops, we got it wrong. Like, they lied. Like, I don't know how else to say that. It was a lie. If you've been tuning into Simply Bitcoin, we told you, like, from the beginning that they started printing money, we told you from there's going to be record inflation. How is it that two people on YouTube, we're not professional journalists, we're learning, we're getting there, but two self-taught YouTubers that somehow managed to turn a hobby into a podcast into a small media company, how is it that we are more accurate than people that are professionally trained that went to school for this on TV? Why is that? That's like, you want to know why independent media and Joe Rogan are so popular? This is why. Because people don't believe the legacy media anymore. And it's not because of the format. It's because of what they're saying. You believe them for a certain extent, but after a while you start to look at them and you're like, I don't kind of believe you. And then if a guy who talks about DMT, he actively,
psychedelic monkeys,
he actively just smokes weed with Elon Musk on his podcast, and he's getting 12 million views per episode on average. And the best day that CNN has, they get about 1 million views, listeners. Joe Rogan is 12xing their engagement and their viewership. And the reason is simple in my eyes. Joe Rogan's just telling the truth, and they're not. Like, that's what it comes down to. And then you have to ask yourself, like, why is that? Like, why are they so hell-bent? Do you remember how hard they went against Joe Rogan during the pandemic when he was having on people that they were literally deplatforming from Twitter? Do you remember that? Like, they literally said that he took horse dewormer, right? So the point that I'm trying to say is the age of legacy media is slowly coming to an end. And from my perspective, they put true journalism and journalists to shame. Like, they're not being ethical. They're not being sincere. They're failing their viewers because they're not telling them what is actually going on. They're not telling them the truth, which is the whole point. Like, I think it was like Thomas Jefferson, I forget it, but it's like the free press is so necessary in order for, they love the word democracy, in order for a democracy to function. But what we've come to realize is that the so-called press is more in the business of providing air cover for the government rather than holding the government accountable. And it falls down to independent media on the internet to essentially fill in that role. But when we fill in that role, we literally get attacked. It's insanity. It's crazy. And then this leads you to another question, which is, the first question is, what is money? But the second question, I think, is even more important question, which you inevitably ask when you ask the question, what is money? What is government? And what is the role that government should have in society? Because I think the role that government has right now, I think that if people actually knew what was going on, I think the vast majority of people would not be okay with it. Anyways, we've been on a little bit long on this, so we're gonna go straight to the news, lots to cover, and we still got the culture segment. Let's check it out. Here we go.
The Daily News.
I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation Devices. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US. It's fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with a UX reminiscent of a simple feature phone. So you will know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes. Experience the peace of mind that comes with taking ownership of your own keys. After a massive sellout during Bitcoin Miami 2023, the Passport is back in stock at foundationdevices.com. Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, completely air-gapped security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. If you're thinking about getting your Bitcoin off exchanges, this is the one for you. Check out the Passport link in the show notes below to learn more. All right, ladies and gentlemen, scan the QR code on your screen right now or check the link in the video description. It will take you directly to the Foundation Devices website where you guys could get yourself a Passport Bitcoin open source hardware wallet. Remember, not your keys, not your cheese. The revolution is self-custody, and you're going to need a hardware wallet to do that. So we recommend Passport by Foundation Devices. Scan the QR code on your screen to get started. Anyways, in other news, CZ, who got arrested, and they did a whole press conference, talking about Binance and talking about all these things. And, as Bitcoiners, we don't like the altcoiners, and, we say that the altcoins are, scams and they're centralized, and, the founders of those altcoins have special privileges and they dump on everybody, and, we know the deal, right? But I come from the angle of, if someone wants to buy Doge, let them buy Doge. It's not my place to interfere. I could make the case as to why Bitcoin is superior and Bitcoin is better money. But if someone wants to take it on their own initiative and wants to buy a crypto, so be it. That's fine. This is a Bitcoin show. We're going to focus on Bitcoin. That being said, we have to find the pattern here, okay? Back in 2008, no banker went to jail. Better said, no notable banker went to jail for what happened in 2008. What happened in 2008 was a crime. Main Street bailed out Wall Street. Wall Street got richer, Main Street got poorer. It was terrible, and I still think we're facing the consequences of that today. No one was held accountable. Why is it that the CEOs, other than SBF, that was like a complete, that was an actual scam, right? But why is it that the CEOs of Binance, BitMEX, Arthur Hayes, have all been arrested by the US government? Why is it that the CEOs of banks, when there's a money laundering scandal, or when they get caught manipulating markets, why is it that they get fines, but our industry goes to jail? And part of the plea deal that they gave CD was that he was banned for life for managing the exchange. So he got a good deal. I think he's only going to serve like 3 or 4 months. And Arthur Hayes, again, he got a good deal as well. And I'm not trying to protect them or to come to their defense, but what I'm trying to say is it's rules for thee, but not for me. Because the traditional financial industry, they don't get charged. They don't get held accountable for any of this. We do. Our industry is it's laser focused. And then you have to ask yourself, why is that the case? Well, I read you the passage from the Sovereign Individual. Why is it that an executive from Binance is still held in a Nigerian prison? And the Nigerian government blamed Binance for the downfall of the Nigerian currency, the Naira. It's not Binance's fault. Binance is just an on-ramp, an off-ramp. I believe that these cases are inherently political, just like the arrest of the Tornado Cash developers, just like the arrest of the Telegram arrester, just like the arrest of Julian Assange, just like the arrest of the Samurai Wallet developers. This is political. It's so blatant because they play by a different set of rules than we play by. That's not justice. That's literally the definition of injustice. Anyways, getting to today's news, which I find also total injustice as well. Fed hits Texas bank with cease and desist over servicing crypto firms. The United States Federal Reserve has issued a cease and desist order to the crypto-friendly United Texas Bank, citing, quote, significant deficiencies. When was the last time the Fed was audited? Do we know? Like, what about inflation? Like, the whole reason as to why the central bank was established in the United States is the American public was sold on the idea that the Federal Reserve was going to keep inflation under control and keep unemployment under control. That was what we were sold. The two largest depressions and recessions in American history have happened under the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve was established in 1913. World War I happened a couple years later. The Great Depression happened a couple years later. And the Great Recession happened in 2008, not to mention all the other, little recessions in between. And not to mention the multiple world wars. So, forgive me if I don't believe the Fed when they quote significant deficiencies. This is the same Federal Reserve that denied Caitlin Long's federal banking charter, which would make her bank, Custodia Bank, competitive with the other banks. Even though Custodia Bank is a fully reserved bank. Right now, most banks, it used to be 10%. Now it's 0%. Why is it that a fully reserved bank was denied a federal banking charter? And why is it that the zero reserve banks are allowed to operate? I'm pretty sure it's the same reason as to why no banker went to jail for what happened in 2008. This feels like a cabal. It feels like a cartel. That honestly, from my perspective, as a millennial, I'm looking at this and I'm like, you guys aren't playing fair. That's what it looks like to me. But I'll let you guys be the judge. I'm not trying to come to conclusions here. In a September 4th cease and desist order, the Fed said it has examined United Texas Bank in May and found issues with its corporate governance structure and oversights by the bank's board of directors and senior management. The examination identified significant deficiencies related to foreign correspondent banking and virtual currency customers, specifically risk management and compliance with applicable rules and regulations relating to anti-money laundering, including the Bank Secrecy Act. Okay, you'd say, Nico, this is crazy. Like, what are you talking about? Dude, maybe, Nico, stop. Like, they probably, they probably weren't, checking all the right boxes and doing all the regulatory compliance that they needed to do. Okay, like, what are you talking about? Problem is that this isn't an isolated incident. A couple weeks ago, another Bitcoin-friendly bank, Customers Bank, in fact, it's the bank that Gemini uses, was also slapped with a lawsuit. It was sued as well. And it starts to look like a pattern, doesn't it? Like the Bitcoin-friendly banks are denied federal banking charters, they're sued, there's regulation. Like, it's almost as if like there's a connection there. And you'd be like, okay, Nico, maybe you're seeing things that are not there. I'll read you Tyler Winklevoss's take on this. Today, the Fed confirmed that Operation Choke Point 2.0 remains in full swing, provided valuable insight into how it works, and verified that the Harris crypto reset is a scam. The Fed revealed all of this in a 13-page enforcement action it issued this morning against crypto-friendly bank Customers Bank. The punchline of this enforcement action is that Customers Bank must now give the Fed 30 days of advance notice prior to entering into any new banking relationship with a crypto company. Of course, the only way you can understand this is by connecting the third paragraph on page 1, which says, whereas Bancorp has pursued a business strategy that involves offering banking services to digital assets, with page 9, effective immediately, the organization shall provide the Reserve Bank with written notice 30 days prior to engaging in any new strategic initiative, product, service, or relationship with third parties related to the digital asset strategy. Given that Customers Bank is one of the only few crypto-friendly banks remaining in America today, this means that the Fed is now a direct gatekeeper standing between crypto companies and their ability to get a new bank account. This is not how principles-based regulation is supposed to work. The decision whether to bank a company should be decentralized across the entire banking industry and made by each bank at its own discretion. Now this decision has been centralized by the Fed and will be made by the Fed at its sole discretion. The choke point has been created. What exactly did Customers Bank do to earn this regulatory straitjacket and be forced to abdicate its own business judgment and decisions making to the Fed with respect to banking crypto companies? That part is entirely unclear. The non-allegation allegations are so hand-wavy and vague, they would make Franz Kafka blush. I don't know who that is, but if you get the reference, you get the reference. So this happened, and it seems like the trend is continuing with this latest news dropping yesterday. Fed hits another bank, specifically a bank in Texas, with a cease and desist order relating to cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, and digital assets. So, like, you know, do we elect who the Fed officials are? No, they're appointed. So there's no democratic accountability. What is this but not authoritarianism? What is this but not a cartel? It's almost as if the incumbent player is setting up arbitrary rules not to allow a new system to come in and potentially change things up. That's what it looks like to me. Now, we talked a lot about all these issues, right? The way that we fix this, specifically in the United States, is just the same way that we fix this in Suriname, and it's just the same way that we fix this in Venezuela. In the case of Suriname, we have to get Maya Paribo elected. If you're in Suriname, that's very important. In Venezuela, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because, you know, the existing regime just doesn't want to give up power to get the opposition party in power. And the United States, it's something very similar. Because at the end of the day, all of this is happening under the current administration. And the administration that's up and coming, they've signaled that they've been somewhat friendly towards the industry and they want to take donations and whatever, but there's no direct confirmations. I'm at the point, and this isn't a red or blue or liberal versus conservative thing, I'm at the point where I'm saying, show me the receipts. Show me action. I see the articles. I see Crypto for Harris. I see all these little signs that you're going to change the policies of the existing Biden administration, but I'm not seeing any action. And I'll show you guys. So let's take a look at the Democratic Party platform and let's Control F this, shall we? Let's look up cryptocurrency. Crypto. I spelled that wrong. Doesn't come up. Let's look up digital assets. Doesn't come up. Maybe let's look up Bitcoin. Doesn't come up. This thing is 92 pages. Just to kind of give you guys an idea. This is the RNC platform. Let's do the same thing. Crypto. Oh, look. They have an entire segment dedicated to crypto and Bitcoin. Look at that. Republicans will end Democrats' unlawful and un-American crypto crackdown and oppose the creation of a central bank digital currency. We will defend the right to mine Bitcoin, and ensure every American has the right to self-custody of their digital assets and transact free from government surveillance and control. It's pretty black and white, bro. Like, I don't know how else to say this. And here's one of the latest, latest clips retweeted by Michael Saylor. And this is one of the latest speeches from a presidential candidate, Donald Trump. Let's check it out.
And instead of attacking industries of the future, we will embrace them, including making America the world capital for crypto and Bitcoin.
I mean, guys, I can't put it any other way. I can't put it any way. I can't tell you any other way. This attack on Bitcoin-friendly banks continues. The attack on the industry continues. There's no mention of any of this in any of their platforms. There's a clear mention by the opposing party. Does this mean Republicans are perfect? No. Does this mean that Trump is great? No. But as a single issue voter that wholeheartedly believes that a lot of the world's problems are caused by broken money, I'm going to support the candidates worldwide, and I'm going to platform them, and I'm going to give them a voice that support our industry. Period. It's not as simple as that. One last thing before I put it to Opti. Bitcoin before party. Bitcoin before party. Bitcoin before party. Fix the money, fix the world. That's my take. Anyways, Opti, what's your take on all this, brother? Because it's quite interesting, man. This regulatory onslaught continues.
Yeah, we've been covering this for a while, and I think the first time that we started covering this, I forget when it was. I believe it was probably the end of last year or something like that. There was that big noise that was made on Twitter about Choke Point 2.0 and how it's happening. And then there was like the opposing view from other people in the industry that were saying, oh, it's not actually happening. And then I think now towards the end of this year, we can all pretty much agree that there has been an active attack on Bitcoin or the crypto industry at large. And it's very clear. We've seen a lot of examples throughout this year that there's been an attack on Bitcoin and the whole industry at large, whether it's Caitlin Long's Custodia Bank getting denied, whether it is the Fed basically attacking the last remaining Bitcoin adjacent banks, whether it was putting the Samurai Wallet devs in jail, whether it was putting the Tornado Cash guys in jail. We've seen this play out in real time on this show. We've been watching this play out in real time on Simply Bitcoin, all of the various attacks. And the opposing side is like, trust us, bro, things are going to change. And us Bitcoiners are basically thinking, like, I don't want to trust you. And as much as Trump may not be perfect, the fact that he is saying the right lip service to us, I think, again, and I'm a broken record when I say this, it's just more signal, and it's more signs to me that Bitcoin as a movement is growing. And even though Bitcoin and Bitcoiners in general are probably a significant portion of the population, our industry is still very tiny in comparison. But the growing political capital that is coming out of the Bitcoin and adjacent shitcoin space is starting to grow. And I think everyone is starting to realize this, even Bitcoiners themselves. You can see that infighting within Bitcoiners of one side, like, don't care about politics, the other side of we need to get involved. And I think this is just signs of the maturity of Bitcoin in general. And so you just love to see it. And I kind of want to go back to what we were saying in the numbers with the Ripple CEO endorsing Kamala. I was basically going to say, and I completely blanked on this part, but it's no surprise that the Ripple CEO is embracing Kamala when she's basically running on an anti-BTC, pro-CBDC standard here. And Ripple, for lack of better terms, has for a long time played that role of we're going to be the CBDC. You know, what they used to say, the bank interbank coin or whatever they were calling it. And so I'm not surprised. Like Nika said, the CEO of Ripple has been anti-Bitcoin for a long time, paying for a lot of Bitcoin FUD. So I'm not surprised by this. Though Obviously, on the surface, hearing Trump continue to double down on this Bitcoin capital of the world, I would love to see this. I am an American. I think America should embrace Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is as American as apple pie. Bitcoin is freedom money. America was built on the principles of freedom. And I think that if more people on an individual level start holding Bitcoin, then that consciousness will start rising and people will ask themselves, what is the role of the government? Why are they stealing all of my wealth? Why do we need to use a money that is designed to steal from us? Though, with that being said, I think the caveat to all this, and I kind of touched on it when we played that Howard Lutnick video, did this sometime this week, I think it was Wednesday, and I mentioned it yesterday. And then we got a little more details about it. And what I'm talking about is we got we got a little more clarity on this Trump World Finance or World Liberty Finance DeFi platform that came out. And lo and behold, to no one's surprise, shout out to Mark Goodwin and Whitney Webb, because their whole platform is they're running on this DeFi lending thing. And they're pushing stable coins here, and they're talking about dollarizing the world and getting access to the whole world. And no one's surprised that has been listening to Whitney Webb and Mark Goodwin on this idea of why stable coins are being pushed, why they're being a part of the regulation, is because they don't have to go through the standard loopholes and regulatory hurdles to dollarize other parts of the world, hence why we're seeing this push. And so I'm not surprised that this Trump World Finance Liberty platform is pushing stablecoins, because it is going to proliferate the dollar around the world. And that's not what I'm here for. I want more people holding Bitcoin. But again, I think this is why you're hearing him say the Bitcoin and crypto capital of the world. It's not for the altcoins or the shitcoins out there. It's to push stablecoins. And everyone in the chat's basically saying, oh, it looks like we're in the then they fight you stage. We've been in the then they fight you stage for a long time. And I've said it on this show multiple times that right now it is not politically feasible for them to attack Bitcoin directly, hence why we're seeing this choke point 2.0 strategy play out. But I think the next attack that we are going to see, and we're seeing it play out in real time, again, shout out to Mark Goodwin and Whitney Webb for covering this constantly, is the next attack is going to be, and it's playing out, again, this is happening in real time, guys. The next attack is, we like you. How do we co-opt this? And I think that's where we need to keep our head on a swivel at this point. But again, the fact that the Republican platform is running on a, we will embrace self-custody, we will embrace the Bitcoin industry, I think this is really good for the industry. Of course, I would much rather have four years of cover so that Bitcoin can get completely out of the race. I already think it's a little too late to stop Bitcoin, but 4 years of cover for embracing Bitcoin would be beneficial for us as individuals. And 4 years of them actively fighting us and doubling down on fighting us, that would just decimate the Bitcoin industry. And as an American that doesn't want to leave America and is running a Bitcoin industry, I think the choice is pretty easy on this front. But I think as with all that being said, as I was saying, it's very important for us to keep our head on a swivel right now and ensure that more people on a grassroots level are holding Bitcoin. Because if enough people are holding Bitcoin, it becomes completely politically unviable for them to attack the Bitcoin industry, especially as the price starts going up and more people have their wealth in Bitcoin. They can try to do whatever emergency act or whatever they want to do to try to stop Bitcoin and blame us for their failures in the fiat system. But if enough people hold Bitcoin, then all of that is moot. If enough people are taking Bitcoin into custody, then they can attack us as an industry. And this is what we try to emphasize on this show, is you need to be holding Bitcoin. You need to protect yourself. And no one out there in the political class is going to actually save you. There is no political solution to this unless Bitcoin gains enough political capital to completely overwrite the system. And this is where we're at. This is the moment we are right now in the movie. Bitcoin is winning, hence why we're seeing all these attacks on Bitcoin, hence why we're seeing all this FUD in regards to Bitcoin, is because they can't actively embrace Bitcoin, because then the sham is up, then the jig is up, and it exposes the whole fiat system. And so, of course, they're going to be like, okay, let's mature this Bitcoin industry, but let's do it within the system, because the people in the suits, the adults are here, and we know how to handle this. And two guys on YouTube and everyone else in hoodies out there are like, no, bro, just it's Bitcoin only. This is how we fix everything. Fix the money, fix the world. It's all about the money. It will always be about the money. You follow the money and you see where the incentives are. And the consciousness is raising on this, and people are seeing through the lies. So I am definitely hopeful, even though at times I get a little black pilled sometimes. I think the orange pill of hope and prosperity on the Bitcoin standard is the real message.
Amen. Beautiful. Oof.
Last thing, Nico. Optimism is the way, guys. We are going to win, and we win in the end. But the journey to that point will be filled with little, small skirmishes. I was going to say the B word, but again, I'm still in PTSD from.
He ain't called Optimus Fields for no reason. Lots of optimism this Friday. Beautiful, beautiful message. Completely agree with you, Opti. We need more individuals taking self-custody. This is how we win. This is how we effectuate change. All right, everybody, let's move on to the culture. We have lots to talk about, and something interesting for you guys. Let's check it out.
Yeah.
The Daily Culture.
All right, everybody, I want to tell you guys about the Orange Pill app. Stack friends who stack sats. The Orange Pill app is the Bitcoin social layer. If you're on the go, you move to a new city, or perhaps you've lived in your city for a long time and you just don't know anyone around you, the Orange Pill app is for you. You pull it up, it will literally show you geographically the Bitcoiners that are near you, and it will allow you to send them a message directly. So you could build up that Bitcoin friend list, that Bitcoiner Rolodex. Also, it's the #1 resource for Bitcoin-only events. So if you're traveling to a city for a conference and the conference is only 2 days, but perhaps you're there for a week, what are you going to do all those other days? Well, that's what the Orange Pill app is for. It will literally show you the Bitcoin events that are happening near you, so you can go with them and you connect with fellow Bitcoiners. It's also one of the best ways to reach me directly. I don't really answer Twitter DMs these days or random emails. So if you want to reach me, download the Orange Pill app, send me a message, and every week or so, I make sure to go through every single one of the messages and get back to each and every single one of you guys. So download the Orange Pill app today, scan the QR code, or check the link in the video description. All right, man, I am so excited about this. We've been working our behind
the scenes.
And yeah, man, I mean,
wait, Nico, just play the video.
Things are going to be changing just a little bit around here. Boom! We rebranded. It's the same Simply Bitcoin, but we're changing up. We are upgrading the brand just to represent how much we've grown, how much we've come. This started as a hobby, and it migrated to a podcast, and now it's slowly becoming, not slowly, it's quickly becoming a media company. And Simply Bitcoin is quite big. We got about 4 people full time, and it's a team of like 12 of us, and
I think a little more, but
so many incredibly talented people just contribute to making this show possible and giving you guys as much content as possible at the rate at which we're giving you the content. It's quite difficult to do, the amount of stuff that we drop and produce. And it's been a wild ride, and it's a privilege to be able to do this for a living. And we wouldn't be able to do this without you guys. So we really appreciate you guys. And thank you for sticking around. I could never have imagined this in my wildest dreams back in 2019 or 2020 when I started this, that, we would be here today. And this would be my full-time gig. This would be Opti's full-time gig. And all the other people that are with Simply Bitcoin. Like we could never have imagined this. So a lot of things are changing. We're going to be revamping the live show. We're going to be making it even better. Stay tuned. And also a special surprise for you guys later on in the day. We have an additional content creator that is going to be dropping content from the Simply Bitcoin channel.
Should we say it?
You guys know who he is if you guys have been watching Bitcoin content on YouTube. Dante Cook is back, and he will be dropping his brand new show, Simply Signal, later on today. He'll be dropping 2 episodes a week. Dante is back on YouTube, and we're really, really excited to have him. He's an incredibly talented creator. So yeah, guys, we're really excited about this rebrand, this refresh. It's just a representation of how far we've come as a company and where we believe we are headed. I think that this is a pivotal moment in human history. This is a separation of money and state. But most importantly, I think the way that we win this information warfare, which is what I describe it, is winning over the hearts and minds of individuals. And one of my favorite quotes that I've heard that actually got quoted by The Guardian when I said it at the Bitcoin conference is that if you want to win the political sphere, essentially what you got to do is you got to win over the cultural sphere. And that's what we're going to try to do here at Simply Bitcoin is merge culture and Bitcoin and really get the message out there and really get people to understand that, it's not left versus right. It's not who's in the White House. It's what money you're using. And if you fix the money, you fix the world. And we're incredibly excited about this rebrand. It's not a new direction. I mean, it's an evolution of Simply Bitcoin. Opti?
Simply Bitcoin 2.0. Yeah, man, I'm super, super excited. We've been working really hard for this. It's took us a while. There was a lot of moving parts, and we're super glad that this is all happening today. And not only that we got Dante on the team. We're amping up our content for you guys. So you guys will get a new OG video, a new 10-minute-ish video, 5 days a week now. We're stacked with our content. Of course, it's going to be the same Simply Bitcoin signal. We're going to give you guys the live show. We're going to give you guys 5 original pieces of content in that 10-minute frame, keep you updated with the news and stuff. Of course, we're going to continue to make the shorts, and we're still figuring out the logistics of how we are going to handle our YouTube and Rumble show, but all of that is in the works. And really what I'm the most excited about, guys, is as we're telling you, we got a new rebrand. So we're also going to give the live show more of a facelift. So things are going to look cool. We're still kind of working on some of that stuff in the works, and me and Jacob have to fully design this on the back end. But give me about a week or so, and we're going to get a completely new look on the live show. I think you guys are going to really love this. It's got some of the things you guys have been asking for. It's also going to give us a little more of maturity here on the show. And that's what the whole thing is, Nico says it all the time. It started as a hobby. It turned into a semi-respectable podcast. Now we are a small startup media company. It's grown a lot. I was getting pretty sappy in our all-hands-on meeting on Thursday about the fact that we've come this far. It's just absolutely incredible. I don't know if I put this on the show before in this context. I think I might have done it on other shows. But I remember when Nico basically tapped on my shoulder and was like, yo, I want you to join Simply Bitcoin. We're going to turn this into the biggest Bitcoin only media show. And it not only Bitcoin media show, Bitcoin media company, Bitcoin only media company. And I've saw the vision since the beginning. And now even Nico and I at times are like, this is so surreal that we've made it happen, and it's happening in real time. We're going to keep iterating, make sure the show is as best as we can make it with our limited skill sets here. But the show is updating, maturing. We're going to get a facelift for you guys. So I hope you guys truly enjoy the next iteration of Simply Bitcoin. Same Simply Bitcoin, just better. Little better production. All these things are in the work, and we're super excited to make this happen. Again, I have to figure out a few things, how to make it fully work, but it's in the works. And for you guys that yell at me in the chat about, such things as lightning tips and stuff like that, I got that all in the works. I just have to fully flush it out, make it look really nice. So when we drop it for you guys, it looks pretty. It looks really cool. It's going to be a facelift for the show, but new brand for Simply Bitcoin. On Monday, it's going to already have a new look for you guys. We just kind of wanted to tease it a little bit for you before we dropped Dante's new show tonight. So we're super hyped about this. And again, shouts out to every single one of you guys. We really appreciate the fact you guys come hang out with us every single day. The comments, the likes, all that stuff. We really appreciate it. And we're going to make sure that we give you guys the best unfiltered raw show possible and stay on that Simply Bitcoin signal. Nothing's changing. It's only getting better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Guys, it's the best is yet to come. Really excited. I saw some questions in the chat. No, I won't be back in the States for a while. I'm gonna be in Vegas, and then I'm going to Europe for October to go to the Plan B conference and the Plan B forum and the Bitcoin Amsterdam conference. And then I saw some other question. I don't know where it is. Anyways, I seem to have lost it. But anyways, guys, it's going to be awesome. We're really excited.
Sorry. Yes.
Yes, that's
New
it.
merch in the works.
That's the question.
Yes.
Yes, so new merch, it's going to be absolutely insane. You guys are going to love it. That's the question I was looking for. So thank you, Opti. So yes, new merch in the works. We're working on it. Stay tuned. We're going to be dropping some incredible news coming up. So guys, stay tuned for Dante's show. It's gonna be dropping later this afternoon. We're Simply Bitcoin Live. This was your episode for September 6th, 2024, Bitcoin or Slavery. I'm your host, Nico. This is my co-host, Optimus Fields. We're Simply Bitcoin Live, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace out, everybody.
It was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, on a mission to enable independence.